Hello, everyone. My name is Julie McVey, and this is Unordinary Made Ordinary, where we talk about extraordinary experiences of everyday people. And today, our guest is Lynda Colter-Bergh. Welcome,
Hi,
Lynda.
everybody. Hi. I'm
I am,
very excited to be here with you.
I am so excited. Really glad you could be here. Um, if you wouldn't mind, Lynda, could you just share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a reformed IT tech head, which is
Oh,
so I came from a very logical, problem-solving world and corporate world. And now I am in a completely different foreign world of doing business coaching, personal coaching, and spiritual coaching. That was completely set up through me wanting to change my life.
I'm going to learn more about that, I hope, in a minute. Thank you for that introduction. What got you interested in all these kinds of topics in the first place? Was it from very young age of interest?
Yes, actually, yes and no. Yes, from a very young age, from the time I was born, I actually could remember, I had memories of my past life, of actually being murdered in my past life. Even though I had that throughout my life, even though I had experiences as a child, at the time I hit school age, my mom really shut everything down, like as many kids are shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and was told, don't talk about these things, don't do this, don't act like that, or people will think you're strange. I spent the next 20, 30 years denying all the things that pointed to my true self, all the things that were strange in my life, were different. I would do my best to logically dismiss my own experiences. And if you want to say gaslight myself, that's what I would do in order to survive. So as I got to a point in my life where I couldn't do that anymore, where it was so in my face, I had to get brave and accept that's who I am and share that.
So why did two questions.
Mhm.
How did you know as such a young child that did you know then that you were having past life visions? And secondly, why did your mom want to shut that down? Did you grow up in a religious family?
So my first part was, as a child, I guess I should explain what it was. Since I was a baby and I can remember being in the crib. I actually can remember lying in
Wow.
the crib. I can remember pulling myself up on the bars of the crib. I can remember stuffing blankets around my head with only my nose sticking out to breathe because that felt safe. If my head was, as long as my head was covered, and care if the rest of my body was covered, as long as my head was covered, I would feel safe. My mom said that when she brought me home from the hospital, she put me in the crib, went out to grab something in the other room. She came back, and I was at the end of the bed with my head sticking out of the rails.
Oh.
That was the day she brought me home from the hospital.
Wow.
So she said, you're the only newborn I've known that needed bumpers on their crib.
Yeah.
Because newborns aren't supposed to be able to roll over, much less get to the other end of the crib with their
Yes.
head sticking through the bars.
Right.
I don't have an explanation for that. I just know that's what she told me.
Okay.
I remember being in the crib. I remember crawling across the floor at 6 months of age, going towards a red object that was making noise. And I was so fascinated by it.
Mm.
Um, and my parents was that there isn't anything like that. And then they went, wait a minute. There's a point where we were adding on to a room, and yes, the floors were rough because I told them the floors were rough. They hurt my knees and my hands. It was an unfinished floor, and that they had a red telephone on the floor,
Mm.
and they remembered that telephone. What I remembered is I was reaching for it, and they picked me up, and I was ticked. I wanted to see what that thing was that was making noise. And I didn't have
Oh,
words for red. I didn't have words for what it was. It was just this
wow.
thing that was making noise that I was really curious about. I have really, really early memories,
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
which I think is unusual,
Fascinating. Yes, it is.
very
And so
unusual.
when you started to get words, or at some point you said, yeah, I remember that hurting my hands and knees when I was 6 months crawling.
We figured it out to 6 months.
Wow.
Um,
That's
so
amazing.
that was at some point later in my life when I was talking to my mom about it, my dad, I was talking to them about these memories that I had as I was
Mhm.
trying to put pieces together and try to understand what I was remembering. Because as a child, as long as I could remember, I would have this dream that was recurring, and it was a dream. I remember talking a lot to my mom about dreams.
Mhm.
Um, but the dream that I had was just this, it seemed different than dreams, if that makes sense. I would have it every night.
Mhm.
I would have dreams, and they were different than this. This was like a broken record playing over and over and over, a reel in my head playing a movie over and
Yeah.
over. And it was me getting on a bus in probably the 50s, or late 50s, very early 60s, from the clothing that I was wearing. I didn't look like me, but to me it was always me,
Mhm.
and I never questioned that. I never questioned
Wow.
as a baby why I looked like an adult. I never questioned any of those. It was just this assumption, yes, this is me.
Mhm.
I watched myself get on a bus with a young girl that was 5 or 6. I used to be able to tell you the street signs that were, because I remember glancing up and looking at the street signs before I got on the bus. As soon as I wrote those down, that's the one thing that I don't remember. As soon as I wrote those names
Huh.
down in a diary, I can't remember them. And now I can't find the diary. That's the
Oh,
one thing I can't remember.
interesting.
But I would get on the bus and sit in the front seat, catty corner to the driver, and the little girl would be sitting to my left.
Mhm.
We didn't have a long ride, but it was definitely not a walkable ride. And a few stops later, a man gets on, and he gets on, sits right behind us. And it's one of those that you get the creeps
Mhm.
from somebody and you don't understand why, but something just doesn't seem right. And that's how I felt. It just didn't seem right. He didn't seem like he was dressed appropriately, was one of
Mhm.
the things that really threw me. He had brown curly hair. Um, if I were to describe it, I've said it would have been the equivalent of Seattle grunge, but in the
Mm.
50s,
Hmm.
late 50s, early 60s. So that's definitely out of place with blue jeans and a flannel shirt and a big knapsack, like a military knapsack with him.
Mm.
He got on and sat behind me. And in a short time, he started playing with my hair, playing with the ringlets of my hair
Oh.
and the back of my neck. And I cannot stand someone touching my hair or playing with my hair to this day. It's just creeped
Well.
me out.
Yeah.
So he would play with that, and as I say it, it's like ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh,
I still
yeah.
get the ooh. Um, and I started realizing that it was getting dark. At our stop, there were no lights. There was no one around where we would be stopping. And I didn't feel comfortable with this guy playing with my hair. getting off in such an
Yeah.
isolated place. What if he got off with us?
Oh dear.
So I started thinking about the stop before that at least had like a convenience store, at least had something where there were lights and people and I could go in there and I could figure out what to do.
Yeah.
So I would gather, I was talking to the little girl that was next to me. And again, always knowing she was my daughter,
Mm.
that was
Hmm.
part of it too, that I always accepted that she was my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Always would talk to her and say, let's just very quietly get your stuff together. We're going to get off early.
Huh.
And she started creating a fuss of that's not our stop, but that's not our stop. It's like, shh, it's okay. Just shh, trying to quiet her
Yeah.
and sitting back thinking, play it calm, play it cool. Don't let on that we're getting ready to get off the bus. I don't want to give any indication. I don't want to give preparation. I just want to get off the bus
Mm-hmm.
and get away as quick as I can. And as I sat back, I leaned back and I realized that there's this cold, round cylinder at the nape of my neck. This feeling of this cold, round thing at the base of my neck, and I don't know what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
I just freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought was, what's that? What's that? What's that? And on the third, what's that? There was this bright red flash and like an echo of a bang, but not the bang. Like this, it was like this very distant bang and an echo of, and this red heat shot to my head and down to my feet.
Hmm.
And just as fast, this black nothingness came up. Old black nothingness. And then I would wake up.
That's a very detailed dream.
It was a very detailed dream to have over and over and over.
Yeah.
Without fear, without curiosity, without anything, which I found just as fascinating.
Yes.
The only thing that affected me was that desire to cover my head because then I'd be safe.
You did tell your mom about this dream?
Later on,
Later on.
I wanted to verify that my memories of covering my head were true.
Yeah.
I wanted to validate what I remember experiencing in the crib.
Yeah.
Because I was told you couldn't remember those things. So my mom validated it all.
Wow.
She said it would drive her nuts, that she was afraid I was going to suffocate myself because I was always covering my head.
Yeah.
And that I always had to have something in the back of my.
Wow. How long, just out of curiosity, at what point did you realize, okay, this was my past life? How old were you when you put the pieces together?
I had that dream every day as a child. As I got older, as I hit school age, that started to wane off a bit. So maybe it was once a week.
Okay. Gee.
As I got older into my teens, college years, it became every couple weeks, every 3 weeks, that would happen.
And you're not telling anybody.
I haven't told anyone through that whole time. I didn't
that
tell
whole
anyone.
time.
Because my mom, because of other things, because I saw a ghost when I was a kid that I would play with, and I'd tell my mom about this ghost. My mom said, don't tell people about this stuff. People are
I see.
So if she's going to think that's crazy, what's she going to think about this? What are other people going to think about this?
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I didn't tell anyone.
So your ghost friend, that I've heard that is common for kids to have a friend that some people say it's just at a time and at your age where you can see your guides, your spirit guides. What do you think about that?
I think that's true. I've had multiple encounters when I was a child. One I think was definitely a guide of a teacher.
Mm.
That's how he presented himself as a teacher. The ghost friend had big old thick pop bottle glasses with wire rims and a funny haircut and white shirt that didn't have buttons. Everything was tied. Pants
Oh.
were tied,
Hmm.
but they were like knickers. They were
Mhm.
shorter, and
Hmm.
the socks were hand darned socks. They weren't commercial socks, and shoes that had big buckles on them. And I remember thinking he looked odd, but he
Mhm.
was the nicest older kid, and he would listen to me. He would come out at a certain area of our farm that I would go to. I grew up on a farm, and I would only see him in a certain grove of trees that I would go to.
Hmm.
And they were very thin trees, and he would come out from behind these very thin trees, and I used to wonder where he hid because I couldn't see him on the other side of the trees, but he would walk out, and there he would be.
Wow. You certainly have had some interesting experiences growing up. I didn't realize, and you were kind of hushed.
Hush.
Now this is just the way it was in your family, or was it
Mhm.
religious, or is that why?
I didn't find out until I had to leave IT because I kept erasing hard drives. It's kind of a career
Oh,
killer when you're in information technology and you touch a hard drive and it erases. That's a bit of a career killer.
yes.
Um, I went to talk to my dad about it because he was so proud that I was working for this big tech company and I had made it. Everybody, yeah, I'd made something of myself. I was successful.
Hmm.
And I was really disappointed and sad. And I wanted to tell him first that I had to quit and that I was choosing to do something else and do it in a different way. And he he was so excited when I told him that I kept erasing hard drives. And he said, I knew it. I knew you had it in you, honey. You
Huh?
can witch. It's like,
What?
Dad, did you just call me a witch?
What in the world?
And he was just over the moon, and he took me out to the garage and he took welding rods and bent them and stuck them in my hands, and he goes, now go find water, honey. What? I had never been exposed to any of this. I had no idea what
Oh my.
dowsing was.
Yeah.
He was telling me I could witch, which was the old word for dowsing.
Okay.
And
This,
I'm
this is a turn of
it's
events.
it's so funny for me that I'm standing there with these rods going, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. And he goes, just walk around the property, and if it works, you'll see what I'm talking about. Go find the water lines in our
Hmm.
property.
Yeah.
And so I went, and of course they
Yeah.
did this little crossing
Yeah.
back and crossing. He goes, I knew you could do it, honey. I knew you had it in you. He said, you had a great uncle that made his living doing this.
Huh.
And he said, and
Wow.
don't tell your mother, but I know that her grandmother was a tea, would read tea leaves,
Uh-huh.
and she never admitted it. She was ashamed of it, that
Hmm.
she would read tea leaves for people, and they'd come from other states to have her read tea leaves.
Very
So
interesting.
that's the only background I know of why my mom was so against this, is that
Okay.
in some aspect it brought shame. That
Yeah. My goodness. Okay. So, I'm so curious. So please, now what direction did you take? And
so
yeah.
at that point, um, I had had some other experiences in my life with the memories that I was having.
Hmm.
And it kind of all came full circle. In my, when I was 19, moved away from Colorado, went to California. The dreams at that point after I got married would come much less often, but as they came, I realized that my body was starting to react to it.
Hmm.
So previous to that, it was just this thing that looped in my head at night,
Yeah.
and I didn't think much of it. Didn't even think of what it was. It was kind of it's sometimes I'm amazed how uncurious I was about it.
Yeah.
To me, that's more of a mystery than anything of how I was
Uh-huh.
not curious about it. But
Yeah.
when it started affecting my body, I would um, have this, when that bang hit, when that blackness took over, I would realize that I couldn't feel my heartbeat and I couldn't move. And I'd heard of paralysis in your sleep that would take place. I can always feel my heartbeat. I thought everybody could. I have an irregular heartbeat. I can feel when my heart kind of ceases. I can feel my heart beating and then pause and then beat and then pause. That's something that's always been with me.
Hmm.
So at night, after that would happen and that dream would happen and the blackness would hit,
Hmm.
I'd realize I'm not feeling my heartbeat.
Is this as you're waking up from the dream?
It's as the dream hits and the startledness of the dream of the blackness, I would kind of do this jolt wake up.
Huh.
My
Okay.
heart my heart wouldn't be beating and I couldn't move anything. And I realized my heart's not beating, I'm not breathing. Oh shit. And it scared me. And then I would have to talk myself into getting something to move, something to work. So I'd lay there and say, open your eyes, Lynda. Just open your eyes.
Hmm.
You can't open your eyes. Move your pinky. Move a toe.
Hmm.
Breathe. You've got to breathe. You've got to breathe. And it would be very brief, and I'd come back. And the
Hmm.
more time went on, the more my body would respond to that, and the longer it would take for me to come out of it. In California, I worked in retail, and I had this amazing woman that worked for me who I always wondered why she was working for me. It's one of those things she classed the place up. It's like, I don't know why you want to work here, but hey, I'll take it. She was always late, but whenever she showed up, we always sold lots of stuff.
Huh.
Like she was just this sales magnet.
Yeah.
So for me, it was amazing to have her just there. One of the times where it really became difficult for me in breathing in being able to come out of it, I really didn't think I was going to come out of it. And it really frightened me. Like I did not think I was going to come out of it at all. My husband would say I would sit up and do this and gasp
Wow. How long
and
did
scare the
this
crap out of him.
go on? So this was at the end of every,
This
it was
was
always the dream, the black, this episode. And how many years or
um,
months?
the not being able to breathe and gasping probably went on for a year
A year,
of having this happen.
like every week or so.
Every probably 3 weeks, once a
Every
month.
3 weeks. Okay.
So,
Okay.
and it was just getting each time was longer and longer.
And
it
you're
would,
not telling your
and
doctor or
I didn't tell
anyone
anyone.
other than, I mean, your husband knows because he's,
Yeah, he knew. But I didn't tell anyone. I really didn't. I didn't talk about it.
another curious thing, like, oh, well, you just,
Shame. I think it was like
oh,
this shame of being weird.
oh, interesting. Okay.
Shame to the point of letting it kill me almost.
Wow.
So I went into work one day when I really didn't think I was going to come out of it. I was shaken. I went into work, and this beautiful woman who was always late coming into work was waiting for me. That's odd. So I greeted her and asked why she was there, terrified she was there to tell me she was quitting. She looked at me as I walked in, and I asked her, hey, what are you doing here? And she said, you had that dream again last night, didn't you? And I just froze because I'd not told her anything.
Huh.
Said,
Okay.
I said, well, what dream would that be? She goes, the one where you die. And I'm this 19, 20-year-old with my cute little briefcase because I think I'm hot stuff in my little suit and think I'm a manager from, who knows, all the things that we label ourselves as. And I remember just being so shocked I dropped the briefcase. And because she not only knew my dream, but she knew that I died in this dream that I never told anyone about. And I said, you've got my attention. And
Yeah.
she said, well, now I understand why I'm here. If you don't deal with this, next time you're not going to come back. And by the way, next time is tonight. There's a come to Jesus meeting for you. So I sat down with her, and she said, I was completely normal, the normal, until my father died. And she said, 3 weeks after my father died, he was sitting at the end of my bed. And from that day on, I could see things. I became psychic. I could see
I see. Okay.
things. And I didn't know why I was led to take this job until last night when I saw your dream.
Okay. Wow.
So it was an intervention.
Yeah.
It was a complete intervention. She was led to be there. She said, here's my understanding of how this works. So she was the first person to give me this understanding of what I was going through. So you were remembering your past life.
Okay.
You were remembering how you were murdered. She described it. I didn't even have to describe it. She described how I was murdered. And she said, here's how it works. We come down here for lessons. We come down here to experience different things, and we make agreements on what we experience. You agreed to be murdered. You agreed to be that person for the man that wanted to experience what it was like to be a murderer.
Yeah.
That was a shock to me.
Yeah.
She said, you guys are trusted. You've been around many times. And he is part of your family on the other side, that we choose to be around different people on the other side, different spirits on the other side, and play out these roles. And you agreed to play out the role of being a mother. You agreed to play the part of being murdered.
Wow.
But what you didn't agree to was that you were going to be murdered in front of your daughter.
Oh.
That wasn't part of the bargain. And you were furious.
Oh, okay.
So when you got up there, normally there's a deprogramming that you go through. You go through this deprogramming of your life, that flashes before your eyes thing that you hear about. That's true. The lessons you go through, the lessons that you learned, and you decide if you want to hang around for a while or if you want to come back and do it again, play some other role. It's all role play. That's what she said to me.
Okay.
And she said, you were so angry about being murdered in front of your daughter that you got up there, you literally gave him the middle finger, told him to F off, and you jumped into another body and you came back.
Ooh. Okay,
And
this is interesting.
she said,
I mean, this is unique.
she said, you came back and you came back to find him for revenge.
Okay.
She said,
Oh,
you're not supposed to. You were supposed to deprogram,
yeah.
but you didn't. You caught a ride on somebody else's
Like,
car.
out of my way. I'm jumping in
Out of
line
my way, this
first.
body's mine. I'm taking it. And you force yourself back down.
Okay.
And she said, here's the problem. You created a situation where you are in California because that's where he is.
Oh, wow.
And you can't do that. That's not part of the agreement. So
Okay.
this whole thing of you having the memory, you're coming up to that age, you're coming up to the age you were, you're coming up to, you're only a couple years away from the age you were when you died.
Okay.
And you're coming up to being in proximity of him more than you ever have in your life. And you are not supposed to.
Wow.
And so you are going to either have to forgive him or you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to
Okay.
do the work here or you're going to have to go back and do the work there.
Interesting. Okay.
So I was shocked and I
Yeah.
what do I do?
Yeah.
And she's, you have to forgive. You have to deal with your anger. You have to let that anger out, number one. This rage that's inside of you is still there, even if you don't feel it. This rage that brought you back down here is there.
Yeah.
And you have to bring it to the surface and let it go. Forgive him so that you can move on and live the rest of your life. So I turned back around and I picked up my briefcase. I don't even know if I said a word to her. I was in such shock. And I went back home. And my husband wasn't there. No one was there. I don't think anyone was in the entire complex because I sat down in the middle of the floor. This is so crazy. This is stupid. This is weird. Okay, I'm mad. I'm so mad. Man, am I mad. I'm mad. I am not mad. What am I doing here? This is nuts. And I played that game for about 10 minutes of just trying to get mad because that's what she said I needed to do. At some point, it's like a lever was flipped. And I went into a rage. I turned into this crazy woman that was crying and screaming and you son of a blank and how could you kill me in front of my daughter? And I mean, I was raging. I was breaking dishes. Yeah. I ripped a pillow apart. I think I stabbed the pillow. I mean, my
goodness.
I went.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. There's a lot in there.
There was a
come
lot.
Out.
It had to, yeah. And I sat there with everything thinking, part of me is like, well, why didn't the neighbors actually? That doesn't give me a lot of faith. I'm hearing screaming and nobody's even
coming
checking on me.
Yeah, that is interesting. Why? Hello.
Disconcerting.
Yeah.
And I thought I had to clean this mess up before my husband comes home.
Wow.
So I cleaned everything up, hid the evidence, and just what happened? You know, what was that? At that point, I was really hesitant, but she said if I did that, I'd be okay. I was really hesitant to go to sleep that night, but I didn't have a dream. I didn't have the dream. I went back the next day and she gave me her notice. Said, okay, I've done what I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
You're fine now. You're fine now. You dealt with it.
Oh.
I've never had the dream since.
Oh,
I
wow. Okay.
remember it exactly like I had it, other than the not being able to see the names on the signs. I've never had the dream. Um, I did have an experience in the last year that Kat, my co-host on our show, put me through a healing process. And one of the things that came up was me actually seeing it from um, his point of view.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Um, some point between then and those 2 points, I actually came to the knowing that, no, that wasn't I didn't agree to have be murdered in front of my daughter, but she agreed to it because that was
Mm.
her journey she wanted to take. So I had to, like, wow, there's a mind work for
Yes,
me. I
absolutely.
I was playing this role in hers as well. Here I thought she was a victim this whole time, and I was playing this role in her trauma that she wanted to experience.
Oh my
I was wanting to
goodness.
be vindictive the entire time.
Yeah.
Moving forward to this past healing that I had with Kat, the the sensation came to me of looking at my hands and seeing them covered in blood and the horror of what I had done. And I realized that was from his point of view.
Mm.
I always suspected, I always felt that he had PTSD, he had mental illness, he was
Okay.
military,
Okay.
and
Wow.
he acted out on this, and he was seeing the blood and just horrified.
Yeah. Oh.
It wasn't until that moment that I actually really full circle and
Hmm.
100%
Wow.
forgave him.
That's amazing. Um, I wonder if that's a big part of why we incarnate here on this planet, the learning like real true forgiveness and empathy.
I really think it is true love, forgiveness, empathy, um, and and it sounds flippant, but I think part of it is just the experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
So him wanting to experience what it was like to be a murderer, me wanting to give him that by being the victim,
Hmm.
my daughter wanting to experience for whatever reason she had,
Yeah.
um, and then going back afterwards and kind of having this movie night where we get to go through and watch what we went through and say, oh, what did you learn about that? You
Yeah.
know, did you learn forgiveness? Did you learn love? Did you learn acceptance? Did you learn to overcome
Mm.
these things that happened in your life? Or did you let them hold you in a lower vibration? Did you let
Hmm.
them control your life? Or
Yeah.
did you rise above those circumstances?
Hmm.
And were you able to forgive the other person, or the things you needed to forgive yourself for?
Wow. So I can't help but be curious. Did you ever think you would want to find your daughter from your past life?
I did, and I got really clear signals that is not to do. That is not my
Okay.
place. Not my place to find her any more than it was my place to find him.
Gosh, I'd be so curious.
It
Um,
would, yeah.
how did this whole coming to this realization and going through this, did this impact your relationship with your husband?
It has, he's always been pretty skeptical, even though
Mhm.
I've done really crazy things around him that, I've read his mind as most couples do. I've gotten in trouble for reading people's minds at work when I wasn't intending to, and coming back and talking to him about it. And, he laughs and goes, there you go, being psychotic again.
Gee, oh my goodness.
And he says, I don't understand why people talk to you. I don't understand what people do or what the attraction is. I don't get it.
Huh.
So it's this weird thing for him that I do that he's come to accept that that's just me and I'm weird. But
Wh-
it's, yeah,
so would you you classify these episodes that you had for a year as near-death experiences? Is that true?
I don't know what to classify them as because they were completely different than a later near death experience that I had.
Okay.
To me, they were just echoes.
Okay.
They were echoes of a previous life that were creating a ripple in this one. That's the way I look at
The being out of breath and feeling your heart stopped.
them.
Do you think your heart really stopped then? But they were
I do actually think it stopped, but I never thought I was. There's this fear of me that I had that it wasn't going to start again, but I never experienced anything beyond that physical self of where I was right then. So to me, it wasn't. I mean, it could have been a death experience at some point,
Hmm,
but it wasn't the crossing over or
I see.
anything like that that I associated with my near death experience that I had later in my life.
Would you like to share about the other near-death experience?
Sure. So, um,
While we're on the
again, how it's
topic.
different. Yeah, how it's different because it
Yeah.
sounds very similar to it in my head. It's very different. Again, that seemed more like an echo, a ripple from my past life interfering with this one.
Yeah, which is so fascinating and unique. I have not really heard anything quite like that.
So there's that piece of it.
Yeah.
What happened later in my life was in my 30s. I had left my high tech job. I had gotten a different high tech job where I didn't have to be around hard drives. And um, then I was really successful. I was making a lot of money. I was, for someone who didn't have anything more than a little bit of college, I was very successful for my lack of education. It was, that was, I had two sisters that were very, very smart. One was a valedictorian, one was a salutatorian. And then there's Lynda. She's really outgoing. That's how we were. That's
Okay.
how my parents would introduce us. Lynda's really outgoing,
Oh.
which I translated into not the smartest one in the bunch, right?
Hmm.
So for me to have a nice high tech job, um, that was success beyond my limited means. That is kind of how I took it. May not have been how anybody meant it, but it was how I took it. I got to the point where if I kept that job any longer, I hated it so much. I hated everything about it. I hated being in the environment. And I knew it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I knew if I kept doing that within a year, I'd be dead.
Mm.
I was so miserable.
Yeah, that's bad.
I was incredibly unhealthy. Um,
Oh.
I was depressed. Everything when my life was falling apart. I mean that whole thing was creating havoc.
Mm.
And so I for the first time really put it out there and said, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I don't know how many people out there have done this. Careful what you ask for. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
Because I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but whatever it is, if you show it to me, I will do it. It doesn't matter how crazy it is, I will do it. I just need to do whatever I'm supposed to do to move forward, to
Yeah.
learn the lessons I'm supposed to learn because Lord knows this isn't working. So I actually got invitations for a franchise that showed up at my work 3 days in a row. And I always dealt with the mail and I can't, I need to make them stop sending this to me at work. So I called them up and said, please stop this. And they couldn't find me anywhere in their database to stop it. Because I'm sorry, we would stop it, but your name is not in our database, I swear. So I took that as my sign. Went, did that franchise, opened the business, 9/11 hit, lost everything. And in this slow decimation of our entire financial well-being, because we put everything on the line for it.
Wow.
My thing that I did, which a lot of people do, I think, is I negotiated when I first did it. Okay, I'll do this, but please don't let me, please replace my income. That was the first thing. Please replace my income so I don't feel so much discomfort, right? So I know I made a good decision. Please replace my income. And it didn't. And it didn't. And in fact, 9/11 hit and it tanked.
Yeah. Wow.
Then it was, okay, please don't let our bank account get below this amount. Well, when that crossed the line, okay, please don't let me bounce a check. For God's sake, I've never bounced a check in my life. Please don't let me do that. Looks like another thing you need to learn. Okay, please don't let me ever have to borrow money. Please don't let me, and all these, every single thing. Please don't let me have to get rid of our items. Please don't let me. It was just every single fear I ever had.
Yeah.
Was like another check on the box. Looks like that's a lesson you need to learn. And during that time, I know this is a long drawn out. During that time, I started to have episodes where I was under intense, because I was under such intense stress. And I would be, it was hard for me to go through a day without crying hysterically.
Yeah.
I would cry on the way into my work.
Yeah.
My business. And the stress with our marriage, everything was imploding.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I was angry. I was like, I did what you said. I did what you said, and I followed it. And this is the thanks I get. This is, I'm losing everything I ever thought was, and everything that I valued is gone.
Yeah.
How could you do this to me? And I was such a victim, right? I was such a victim in all of it. I did what you said, dang it. It's supposed to be roses and butterflies, it's not supposed to be acid and, pain. And I started again waking up in my sleep, becoming conscious, and it was different. It was like the first time it happened, I just woke up realizing I wasn't breathing, but I was conscious, and it was like, well, that's not good. I'm not breathing again.
Did it remind you of the?
It reminded me of before, it was the same.
But no dream, but you're not
no
right.
dream,
You're not breathing.
Right, but I wasn't breathing. I thought, well, that's not good.
You weren't seeing a cardiologist at all during any of these years.
No.
Because you could feel your heart beating all the time.
And
okay.
And so I went through several episodes of that. And each time they would go longer. And the second time it was this feeling that if I was a house, all the electrical cords just got ripped out of the house. And there was no electricity going to it. It was this yanking of all things. So my consciousness was there. I wasn't breathing. I was like, yes, I can tell I'm not breathing. My heart is not beating, but I'm conscious and I'm not freaked out. Isn't that interesting? And that was my thought. Isn't that interesting that I'm not freaked out? I wonder how long this is going to last. And it felt like a cattle prod hit me. It felt like hitting an electric fence that I hit as a kid when I was stepping in water and had metal curlers in my hair, and I hit the electric fence going underneath it with the metal curler, and it knocked me on my butt. That's what it felt like. And it hurt. My heart physically hurt. It happened again and again. And each time it happened, I was in this, I would go further
You mean
beyond fear.
again and again, not in one night,
Not in one night,
over a period of
time.
how
It could be 3 to 5 days maybe between each session. It happened over a 6-week period.
oh gosh.
So it was like a
Okay.
dozen times in a 6-week period.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so it was happening really frequently. And it got longer and longer. And one of the times I remember being in this, it's like, okay, where am I? Yeah, I'm consciousness. Where am I? And then I realized I was in this void, this blackness that was blacker than black. And I was like, well, that's curious. Yeah. But I feel like I can see, but there's nothing to see, but I feel like I can see energy. Like at a different level, I could see things, not forms, but beyond forms, this energy. And zap, I'd be back. One of the next time I came, not only could I feel that energy, but now I could feel love.
Mm.
Like this love, there was a love that was so much more than any expression of love we have on this earth. Bar none. No forgiveness, no unconditional love that we have here comes close to that love. And I remember thinking that love is external to me, but it's also me. Like it's welcoming me. So it's not part of me, but it is. Like I could come home to that love and be a part of that love. I remember also thinking, why am I not seeing a white light? Why am I not seeing a tunnel? Why am I not seeing people? Why am I stuck in this void? What is this? And I got this really distinct feeling, knowing that all I had to do is choose to go further. And I could have that. I could have heaven. I could have what people describe.
So over the 6-week period, and you'd have them every 3 or 4 days or something.
Like,
it would extend each
it would
time
extend.
you are in the void. Your
Yes.
time there would
time
a little bit longer. Okay.
And I started being very logical. So I was sitting there each time kind of evaluating it. And it's like, well, how long am I here? Am I here a really long time? Am I here just a brief time? How does time work over here compared to there? I mean, all those things were going in my head. What is this? And I realized that sometimes I felt like I was there for a really long time in this waiting room. I called it the waiting room. Just exploring and feeling and trying to figure out what I wanted. Each time I would think about my husband waking up to me being dead and my parents burying me. And I thought, I can't do that to them. As soon as I would have that thought, I would be back.
I see. Okay.
That's what drew me back.
Right.
So
otherwise, you would probably have kept dipping your toes, walking in further.
Right, further.
The water's nice. I'm going to keep
it. Really was. And there were times I sat there and I played with it. Like, do I want to stay here?
Yeah.
And there was a huge part of me that said, yeah, I want to stay here. But that always, the thought of my parents and my husband brought me back every time.
Yeah.
Except the one time when it was really hard for me to come back. And I wasn't coming back just like that.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, this is getting serious. Like I realized this is getting serious.
Yeah.
During that 6 week, you've asked me about going to see a doctor. Yes, I actually did see a doctor. Close to the beginning of that.
Okay.
And he ran every test under the sun on me. And he ran sleep tests. He ran heart tests. He ran everything that
Hmm.
he could think of. He knocked out everything. It wasn't epilepsy. It wasn't the seizures you get in your sleep.
Yeah.
It wasn't grand mal seizures. It wasn't sleep apnea. I mean, he
But you
went
did have
through
an
it.
arrhythmia, right? You said?
I have an arrhythmia,
And he knew that, but that's
and
it.
he knew that. That's it. Yeah.
Wow.
And he said, at the end of all the testing, he said, I don't know what to do with you. He said, I've tested for everything I know. We've pulled in heart doctors. There's nothing to explain why your heart is stopping. But I
Wow.
completely believe that it is stopping because what you describe is what people describe when they have paddles used on them. That shock that you feel
Paddles. Okay.
is the shock when
Wow.
electricity hits somebody's heart. That
Yeah.
is what they tell me they feel.
Yeah.
So I completely believe you in that your heart was stopping. I just can't tell you why. And he left the room in this kind of daze, and he left my chart sitting on there. So I, being a little curious, I opened up my chart, and I had this one page, this page this big that had question marks written all over it. And then in the middle of it, he had written out of body experience.
Oh, okay.
That's all he had, and question marks everywhere. I ended up right after that, literally like the next day, helping a woman that I know at a metaphysical fair for her business. I was just watching her booth. She had nutritional products. And I was standing at her booth when this little short woman walked up, and her head was literally at my chest. And she got in my space and like 6 inches from me, and is staring smack at my chest. It's like, excuse me, but you're in my space. And she didn't say or move or do anything. So I stepped back and I said, excuse me, can I help you? You're in my space. And she stepped forward again, and she never looked up. She just kept looking at my chest. It was so
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
that's odd.
And I pushed her physically back, and I said, excuse me, can I help you? You're really making me uncomfortable. You're in my space. And she looked up at me and she said, want to know why your heart keeps stopping? And it's that same feeling of when I say, the briefcase dropped. I mean,
Yep.
my heart just drops. It's like, got my attention. And she said, because you don't want to be here.
Oh,
And you need to decide if you're going to be here, because tonight's the night. If you go back, you're not coming back. So you need to decide what you want to do. And that was the second time in my life someone had said, tonight's the night. Should her get off the pot.
very interesting.
And so
Okay. It's like you
I,
have these guides or whatever, these mediums, and brought to
mhm,
you right at the right moment.
right at the right moments,
Mhm.
intervening and saying, this is it. And so I met her afterwards, went to her apartment. Everything was in boxes.
Mm.
And she pulled out a table and had me lay on a massage table. And first
Okay.
she talked to me, and I probably spent 2.5 hours talking to her before I had her convinced that I actually wanted to be here.
Oh, okay.
Which in reality, she was having me convince myself whether or not I was going to wanted to be here.
Okay.
That was what that time
This
period
is
was.
amazing that it's like you have, for whatever reason, like you are having control over your exit.
It was
You know,
interesting. Yeah, that the both times I have a choice. If I choose, I can go one more time, but I'm not coming back. And but you need to understand. And that's what she said. She said, you have the ability.
hmm,
For whatever reason, you have the ability to check out.
weird.
And you need to
Wow.
decide, because next time you're toying with it and you're not going to come back.
Oh my
But
gosh. But you
you know,
kind of sense that, it seemed like.
I did sense it.
Yeah.
Um, and so she did some, I believe Reiki. I don't know what else she did, because the second I laid down on that table,
Uh-huh.
within a minute I was out,
Wow.
out, which is
Powerful.
weird for me. And like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I wake up and she's done.
Oh my goodness, that's a long time.
It was a long time. And she brought me through and said, "Okay, we're done. And oh, by the way, I got rid of that spot in the back of your shoulder, behind your shoulder blade, where that spear went through. I figured that was hurting you. I pulled that out." Or no, that was the knife. She says, "I had a spear that went through my side. So that's not what killed me, but the knife in my back did." So she pulled it out.
Okay, so this is another
This is
past
something else.
life.
This was a different past life thing that she
Man.
pulled out of me. And I have a rib that would pop out in that exact spot all the time for no explanation.
Mm.
And I always dealt with the pain, but it was just always there. So I never thought anything of it. It was
Yeah.
just, I thought everybody had pains like that. And so once again, after that was done, I've never had that happen again. But to me, I consider that different because I went somewhere as an out of body
And you
experience.
felt well, it sounds like you're feeling the love and the presence
Yes.
of source.
Yes.
Um,
And
wow.
it was kind of weird to me that
How
what was weird to me is like I felt source almost more in that void, but it was like, but you can take a detour to heaven. You can take a detour over here to do your processing
oh,
and everything. Like it was like here you can. It was like this. I don't know, like this fatherly, this love that I was feeling, and I could just go further and be even more into that. But in some
higher
sense, it
level.
felt like
Hmm.
that was in itself something different than where I was going. Like where I was
So
going was this processing center, right?
it's so a dozen near-death experiences, sounds like, right? You said
Yeah,
about a dozen
yeah,
times. They
yeah.
got longer and longer. Have you ever heard of anyone having this kind of experience now that we have more access to these stories? I haven't.
I haven't. I also, until just fairly recently, I just did not expose myself to anything or anyone that had anything to do with near death experience, that had anything to do with ghosts, because I knew I had my experiences and I really wanted to document them
Mhm.
without
Mhm.
having
Influence.
anything else influencing it. And so I
Uh,
completely steered clear of it my whole life.
are you writing a book or did you write a book?
I'm writing. Yes,
You're
I'm
in the
writing a book right
process.
now. Yeah.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I know that my listeners are going to be very interested in maybe getting a hold of that story if you finish, when you finish. I know these can be emotional processes of writing and
Mhm.
reliving some of this in that way. It can be cathartic, and so that's a very wonderful thing that you're doing. Gosh, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Are you working on any current projects other than the book? You have a podcast, right?
You have a podcast. It's called Third Eye Salon. And I have that with Kat, who is just this amazing psychic, who's the one that really pulled me out of that psychic closet. And
Oh,
took him about 10 years for me to even say the word psychic. Literally 10 years for him to get me to say the word. And it's like this huge celebration that I actually said the word. Um, I wouldn't even admit that I had abilities. Even with everything that's happened, I wouldn't admit that I had
wow.
it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that shame level of that was carried down from my mom was so ingrained in me,
Mm-hmm.
deep within me, that I had to release all of that first. And the ironic point was I couldn't release it till I did it, which I think is one of our lessons.
Hmm.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't release it and then do it. You have to do it, and that's part of the releasing process.
Yeah.
So we do a podcast every Saturday morning live with amazing guests, and we have a salon. We have usually three co-hosts where we talk about what's happening with the person and what they're talking about. And so it is a salon of ideas.
Interesting.
So we have guest co-hosts, and
Okay.
it's just a lot of fun, and it's live. So I monitor the comments and bring the questions in live with the guests,
Okay.
which I think also adds another element to what we do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
I now switched from a normal job to my coaching practice, and that was because I did business consulting, which included me working with some of my clients on the side. And they said, the money you saved us is great, but what really made a difference for us is, when you do that thing that you do where you kind of just look through me and then you say something that's like life changing, that's what you should be doing. What? What? I do what? And they said, yeah, you kind of look right through us and then you say something. And I didn't realize that I was auditorily picking things up and then asking them about those things. And that was like searing through to something that they were working in their lives. And so I used my abilities now in coaching, in spiritual coaching, life coaching.
And do you
I
have a
work with
website
entrepreneurs.
for that?
I have a website. It is down right now because it's being
Okay.
edited, modified, but it's
Okay.
Journey to Wisdom. So if people want to reach me, they can reach out to Lynda, Lynda, at journeytowisdom.com.
Okay.
Yeah, I say Lynda with a Y because my mom knew that Y was going to be my first word. Why?
Yeah, I can relate. And I will, of course, put all of these links up in the video description for those who want to refer to it. So this has been amazing. I have really enjoyed this conversation, Lynda. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I have too. And I think if I can do anything, it's to let people know that there's so much more out there that we don't understand. And to just realize that what we have going on here, we have choice in how we respond to what happens. And that's part of the process. Part of that process.
Yes. Very true. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone watching. Appreciate you being here with us. This has been Julie McVey with Unordinary Made Ordinary. And I hope you'll join us next time for another fascinating interview. And if you did enjoy this interview, please give it a thumbs up or hit the like button. And if you like this type of content, of course, please subscribe. And then you can hit the bell icon too, because then you're going to be alerted to future videos. So hope you're having a lovely day or evening wherever you are on the planet or off the planet. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.